Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be online again as we cannot meet each other physically yet and go over the challenges and the leadership activities during this tough time. It's a great pleasure, Upayan, to have you with us and UL as one of our corporate partners. And we really would love to get to know you better and your activity during this challenging time. But to start, I would love if you can briefly uh, describe what is UL activity right now and how if it has changed since January this year.
Yeah, thank you, Saeed, and thanks for having me and being representing here UL. Just a real pleasure to work with you and the Plug and Play team. Thanks again. Um, with regard to UL, we are a over 126-year-old company founded on safety science, and our focus has always been on ensuring that products and people are safe. So for most of us, we've interacted with UL in a very discreet way. So if you turn over most of your household electrical systems or computers or electronics, you'll see a little UL mark at the back. And basically that means that this product has been tested to the extreme and it's going to be safe. You know that this product will be safe with that UL mark at the back. And it's something that I think we're all very proud of in terms of our history and where we've come from, building on that on that rich background of safety. Over the last several years, we've sort of expanded our definition of what we consider safety and how we engage ourselves with clients and stakeholders in the environment of public safety. So, a few ways that we've done that is sort of growing our capabilities and exposure to things like chemical safety, environmental safety and sustainability, even looking into things around automotive and cybersecurity safety. And that's really allowed us to become far more relevant in a global dialogue around how do we ensure that both products and people continue to be safe as they, as new technologies come into the marketplace. When it comes to healthcare, we've also gone through a very similar transition. And we started as being the world's largest tester of electrical medical devices. And again, that's sort of building on that rich history that we have of understanding electrical products very deeply. But since then we've become the leading provider of innovation and design support services for usability, as well as regulatory strategy for globalization of medical products through our Imago by UL advisory business. We are also in a broader scale of testing than just electrical characteristics. We look at biological characteristics, clinical. We look at chemical as well, environmental impacts of products. And then, as the product actually goes through its life cycle and comes into the marketplace, as you know, with regulators around the world, there's been an increased focus on post-market quality and efficacy. And we help our clients with vigilance reporting and also ensuring that supply chains are robust and continue to deliver the quality that they expect. So UL really has branched out in a very meaningful way and become a market leader in full life cycle support services for medical devices. And this is, I think, where our future is headed, especially in a situation like this where we are with a pandemic, that we can be relevant to our clients in a broad scale way.
I believe UL certification gives trust to the consumer. And trust at this time on the product, on the devices that we use, it's even more critical than in a normal time. Do you fast track some product? Do you work with small device startups as well as the big manufacturers? How do you separate your services for, let's say, smaller client versus larger clients?
Yeah, let me maybe split that into a couple of areas. The first is that, as you look at how UL, is relevant to our customers, especially in healthcare, there's a long tail of small and medium-sized businesses around the world. And these clients are the ones that, tend to be the ones that need us the most on a regular basis. However, the larger clients tend to drive a lot of the volume in terms of innovation. They're always innovating. Every year, new products, new technologies are being driven by these large manufacturers. So we have to kind of really diversify how our operations work. So for smaller clients, really focus on how do we provide them speed at the pace that they need. Whereas for the larger clients, it's much more around ensuring that we're integrated into their processes, so that as they're speeding through their innovation cycles, we're working neck and neck with them to ensuring that they achieve the goals that they're looking for. So we really look at it from two different perspectives. The needs are slightly different, although ultimately the goal is to provide high technology coming into the market. They have sort of a slightly different cycles that they go in with. The second is that especially with the COVID-19 situation, there's a lot of focus on specific areas. So we've obviously all heard of PPE, personal protective equipment, and transmission preventing equipment from being something that's very very important to bring to market fast, to help the first responders and those who are treating the patients. And so, what we've created is an offering set around some of these very important high volume, high interest ventilators, disinfecting equipment, areas like that. We've created, sort of workflows across our organization that, like you kind of said, speed through the product, within our organization, and ensure that handoffs are made much smoother, ensure that, the feedback is getting to the manufacturers much quicker, so that we can get that product to market. So I think that those are kind of two things that, we really looked at over the last few months, making sure that we're taking care of the specific needs of these clients, as well as ensuring that the specific use case of the device that's being looked at is also taken care of.
You mentioned in your opening remarks that other than electronic certification, you're also getting involved in chemicals sustainability. I personally wanted the year 2020 to be my entry in investing in sustainability. We are working with the top 30 companies around the world in alliance to end plastic waste. And we feel, I love to learn more about what do you do as far as helping the supply chain, helping the chemical or sustainability, because it's kind of new to me. I don't know UL in that aspect.
Yeah, it's really a fascinating area, and some of this has come to us through acquisitions that we've made again over the last several years. I'll talk a little bit about the sort of the environmental side of it, because that is definitely a very interesting area for us, especially as we look at sort of building environments, and this is something that's very topical right now with the sort of the reopening of commerce and buildings and places of multiple people gathering over the next few months. We have one of the largest and most highest depth and expertise around indoor air quality. And this is really a center of excellence that we've built and over the last several years. And we are one of the leading providers on VOC testing, so organic compounds, volatile organic compounds. And we help manufacturers around the world ensure that the materials that they're using are sustainable and don't create hazardous situations for consumers around them. We work with many manufacturers, retailers to ensure that the products that they stock on their shelves are sustainable as well as risk-free. I think that this is something that in the healthcare space is going to continue to increase. The demand. I mean, we're already seeing this with things like breathing gases, especially around ventilators and other types of breathing equipment. VOC is a huge, a very important topic, and that is just going to get even bigger. So, yeah, I personally, I am also very interested in that space, and thankfully, UL has, again, like I said, a very strong presence in that space.
I believe one of your acquisition has been Emergo, that has led you in different industries as well. And I was thinking that, let's say if a process for UL certification would have taken, I'm just taking an arbitrary number, 3 months to get a product certified. Have you put some fast track initiatives, especially as it's related to COVID-19 product and devices?
Yeah, thanks for bringing up Imago. Imago, before we bought them, were they were the largest provider of regulatory strategy and consulting for medical devices around in the world, and they've continued to grow at a very nice, healthy rate since we acquired them. So they've just really been a fantastic addition to UL's portfolio. One thing I should mention is that since UL is a certification body. And we also provide advisory services to ensure that we don't have conflicts of interest where the advisory side advises on things that the certification body is working on. We separate the two organizations completely from personnel, systems. There's a lot of really solid firewalls that we put in place to ensure that there's no bleed over of certification decisions and information. However, that being said, I think it is important that we understand that the organization as a whole is focused on bringing high technology devices into the marketplace, and specifically to COVID-19. UL has a broad range of offerings and capabilities that can really enable clients that are thinking of either adapting existing products into sort of a new intended use or bringing a completely new technology into the marketplace. And as I said earlier in my discussion, different customers are really looking for help around different areas. It's not sort of a one size fits all. Most clients at this point in time are really looking for support on being able to globalize their products. So they've got products that are let's say ventilators that are being used in Europe, and now they see big opportunity in the US with our need over here to bring ventilators into the US. So we have Imago that can help them bring those products into the US or vice versa. At the same time, we have manufacturers that need to get the UL certification so that they can be placed in hospitals in the US and also around the world. and we do have fast track mechanisms to ensure that those products get tested, and the feedback between them and the communication between them and our engineers is very crisp and clean. So we do try to ensure that there's we do ensure, excuse me, we do ensure that there's very clear separation of entities and capabilities between advisory and testing, while at the same time we're doing everything we can possibly to ensure that products get the attention that they need and move through. In fact, we've been working with several large clients. You've heard many of their names in the news recently, bringing testing and disinfecting products to the market very, very quickly.
I have had the pleasure of talking to Mayor Turner of Houston yesterday, and about a few weeks ago, I was talking to Mayor Park of Seoul, Korea. And since I operate globally, we have offices in Far East Europe, and specifically in Spain, as we are going back to work, we have decided to test every employee almost every week. And it seems like it's easier to do that in Spain or in Far East than it is here. How do you feel the challenges of different continent or different countries dealing with this devices as well as testing? Do you see some quicker action and reaction from different countries and different continents, and can we learn something from this?
Yeah, very interesting observation. I mean, Mayor Turner has a really tough job ahead of him, and a great city of Houston. Hoping that it's able to come back online very soon. One of the interesting points is that us in the U.S. we've been relatively isolated. When it comes to mass pandemics. H1N1 was sort of the last one that we went through, and it wasn't nearly as severe. But Asia has gone through multiple. We hear of SARS and H1N1, of course, but there's been others in the last several years. And through sort of this process of repetition, they've gotten the pandemic response into a really crisp and clean process, and that was seen very clearly. When China went through the initial infections in late December and January, and they were able to recover very quickly because they put strong actions in place very quickly. Now that society and that government is very different than what we have here in the U.S. But that being said, the actions that they took were very distinct and were practiced, things that they've gone through in the past. Hong Kong, Taiwan, very different governments than China, but yet they also showed extreme resiliency because they practiced this before. Middle East, they went through the MERS pandemic just a couple of years ago. So again, they've sort of seen this show, unfortunately, a few times, and it's something that they've built into their systems. For us, we're going through that learning process, or we've gone through that learning process now over the last few months, and I think we're now getting we're getting to the point that we're much better at being able to manage it. We've got the supply chains running now. Availability of important life-saving equipment is far better now than it was a few months ago. So I do think that we're in a much better position now, but it was hard learning going through.
And specifically with this antibody test or other tests, again, like from what I hear from our different location, it seems like I have heard or seen in the news that a lot of antibody tests are now being taken off the market in US, and the reliability percentage is very low. And again, maybe I'm not just close to the other countries and what tests they do or what they challenges they have, but somehow I feel in US we are having more challenges or more false start. And is it all because they had to deal with czar before or other experiences? Because even Italy and Spain is making now good progress.
Yeah, Italy and Spain are good examples of those that have responded very well, but they went through a very significant curve. They were very hard hit initially, and struggled for at least a couple of months to get this under control, and then they took some very tough action that ensured the reduction in the spread. So good on them for taking that tough action, but they were in the initial onslaught pretty unprepared for what was to come. Um, I think that to answer your question, there's really the EUAs, so the emergency use authorizations that I think you referenced. For the U.S., to for bringing products like antigen and antibody tests into the market very quickly. It is, to me, in my opinion, it is the right process. The FDA, has a tough job of sort of balancing, public health and public safety with, ensuring that there's access to these sort of life-saving, capabilities. And under a pandemic or an emergency situation as we are in now, they have the ability to use the tool called the EUA to speed the introduction of these tests. Now, as part of that, you're going to lose some amount of oversight in terms of do you have enough real world data? Do you have enough clinical trial data to ensure the the effectiveness of the product that you're allowing into the market? So as I said, again, they have to balance and weigh the pros and cons. And I think, look, it's a tough job. But that being said, they continue to really focus also on the post-market. As you said, they've been taking stuff off the market, partly due to the evidence begins to show that these are not effective, and so they're continuing to do their job and have that oversight. Also, look, any situation like this creates bad actors that bring products to the market that really shouldn't be there, that should not be labeled for the users that they have been, and the FDA has been pretty strict about that too, and pulling that off the market. I personally would not feel that is a big threat or something of a huge concern as a consumer. I mean, I think that the FDA is doing the best that they can, and for me to second guess them, I think would not be helpful. But it is something to continue to watch, I think, as a stakeholder in the ecosystem.
Wonderful. And I wanted to little bit, I really would love to see what happens when we get over this COVID-19, but I love to get your thoughts about the new norm. Are we really going to get used to, let me share with you, we had a survey at Plug and Play, and in our headquarters, we have 250 people. And I think 65% responded they are not comfortable coming back to work June 1st, which California allows. So we are working well from home, but I kind of like getting together at work. I like seeing people face to face. But what do you think will be the new norm? Do you have some thoughts about that?
Yeah, I'm sure everyone has some perspective on this. I'll give you what I think, where I see it headed. UL, when this first happened, our first focus was on ensuring that our people were safe, very much like all other companies around the world. We were fortunate to, in most cases, to be able to have our employees work from home. We were able to have our most of our organization work from home and from the safety of their couch or from their office at home. However, there were several employees that had to come into the work because of they supported products that were deemed as essential. Healthcare being one of them, where we had technicians and engineers who came into work and willingly came in, knowing the importance of what they did. And it was we work for a great company, and we do great things, and it's just really impressive to see how these individuals really made put others benefits ahead of themselves. But that being said, we have to understand that even when we do start opening up and having more employees coming into work, this is a new normal. I'll give you a very simple example. Prior to this, we didn't really think about employees or customers that had suppressed immunities. And that is something that's quite common, actually. If you start to look at it, there's especially in a large multinational company, you're going to find a significant portion of the employee population that has restricted immunity, or their families have lowered immunity, and we have to understand that that is something we have to take care of. I don't personally have a good answer for how we manage that, but it is something that we have to take into account. At UL, one of the things that we are called upon by our clients is to help them understand what the new normal is going to look like, and how do they manage, this transition. And every client is unique. Everyone serves a different part of the industry, and from everything from the supply chain to how they track people within the environment, to how they disinfect the environment, to how they space and design the workspace, how they use new technologies like thermal imaging, as an example, to be able to identify potential hazards and risks ahead of time. All of that is going to become the new normal, and we're working with some healthcare providers and looking at, again, how they integrate different technologies, not just medical devices, other types of technologies, and ensure that data gets moved from one place to the other, so that you track patients, you track clinicians in the environment, and ensure that infection doesn't go from one place to another. So it's all going to be, I think, a learning for us, but I think that as long as we have an open mind, that this is a new normal, and we are going to have to take care of risks that we didn't know of before. I think that the opportunity is there for us to do better.
Is there, like, again, this disease doesn't consider borders, it has traveled the whole world. Is there some, like, bright learning that we can have after this is over? And also, maybe you could relate it to innovation and technology and startup, that really, like in Plug and Play, we try to find challenges in banking, in insurance, in automotive mobility, and then we try to find a solution through a startup, through innovation and technology. Do you think there is some learning through these challenging times that startups could focus on, and what we call provide a total solution, not only the device, not only one software? What is your thoughts? What is the role of startups and innovation in this challenge?
Yeah, look, this, as long as this crisis hasn't personally affected you in a negative way, I think that, it's best said by somebody much more famous than me, which is, never waste a good crisis. And, look, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for innovation. Had anybody said, to you, 5 months ago, that a planet of 7 billion people, we wouldn't be able to meet one on one anywhere in the world, you'd have laughed, laughed at that. But what the bright spot to me is that we innovated, regardless of what we, the situation around us, and as you said, that this threat, traveled the world. We work from home. Yes, certain industries were impacted much more negatively than others, and look, I think that those industries are innovating too, and those that are innovating are succeeding in that space. But think about, like, Jennifer said at the beginning of this conversation that 2% of medical visits were online, were through telehealth, and now it's 70%. And personally, I've done that myself now. I never did it before this crisis, and I can tell you I'm quite impressed with the technology and how we've done it. But you know, uh, necessity obviously is a huge driver of innovation. But I think that this is the time for us to look at innovation from a lens of what is really important, and especially for startups, and the ecosystem that you have at Plug and Play, which has always been such an impressive lot to me. But look at the innovation that you're driving, whatever field you're in, as you said, whether it's banking or automotive or healthcare. Uh, you know, Everything is going to be different. You talk about health, automotive companies. You've heard of Ford and BYD in China. They're all looking to figure out how do their products interact in an arena of wellness, right? Where how do they ensure the wellness of their occupants, or how do they ensure the wellness of those that are interacting with their products? And I think that startups today have just such an amazing opportunity to really find what's important, what is that thing that they do that's different than what's been done in the past, that's going to change an effective outcome. And it really focuses down on what's important. So I think the maybe the couple of messages that I have around this is, one, there's probably no better time to innovate. This is just a once in a lifetime opportunity. But second is that, given that everyone is innovating, and you, me, and everyone around us is innovating. So for startups to really differentiate themselves, they've really got to focus down into what's really important for the problem that they're trying to solve, and be very articulate around that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We are working with Boeing and Airbus and the airlines to somehow make the passenger feel and be more safe in the planes and in the airport. And every movement has a challenge and an opportunity to have an innovation. But with that, maybe I can have Simon to see if there is some questions. It has been really pleasure to have you with us. And I really like the UL, the sign of trust. And we really need to work together to come out of these challenging times.
Yeah, thank you so much
Glad
for
to
having
have
me.
you.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Thanks. Go ahead, Simon.
Terrific. Yeah, really insightful. And Upayan, let's not lose you. We've got a few questions from the audience here. You mentioned that this mission of driving trust is such a massive part of your organization. One of the things that we've been hearing from all of our healthcare partners is some of the challenges of patients feeling that it's safe to return, even when it might be safe. Could you talk about how you're supporting your customers in thinking through not just making it technically safe, but making it also feel safe to return to work or to engage with various devices and that kind of thing.
Yeah, thank you for that, Simon. Thanks for that question. As you said, UL is founded on this proposition that science drives safety, and safety will drive trust. For us, as we look at the evolution of healthcare and wanting to go, we go from sort of emergency procedures that are kind of the norm to going back into a situation where elective procedures and elective care is back on the table. And we have to ensure that patients, as they go into healthcare environments, are as comfortable, or if not more comfortable than they were before, while ensuring all the safety precautions are put into place. One of the ways is you really look at how patients interact with the environment, how they interact with the devices, how the clinicians interact with the environment, and how they interact with the devices. And a lot of that has to do with sort of behavioral analysis, usability analysis, environmental analysis. And UL has a really robust set of offerings that looks at all this together to ensure that the process of and workflow of patient safety and of clinician safety is well managed through disinfection, better signage, better usability of products, ensuring that the process of scheduling and bringing patients in and treating patients is as well managed, through again better communication to the patient, better communication to the clinician, and also ensuring that there's appropriate physical distancing, as well as clear communication of what needs to be done, and infection control within environments. So UL really has this sort of broad set of offerings that we can bring to bear in that situation.
Yeah, it's really interesting, the sort of the human side and the technology side. We had an interesting question here from Melissa Albrecht, and one of the things that you actually mentioned in passing was these mobility companies starting to ramp up production to assist on the healthcare side, but also having to consider a whole new domain of risks, I suppose, as they're thinking about their products. Can you talk a little bit about how UL is engaging with non-medical manufacturers and supporting them build up and think about more of the healthcare side of things, particularly in the context of COVID, perhaps?
Yeah, this is fortunately or unfortunately not a new problem. We've dealt with large consumer companies wanting to bring their technologies into healthcare for years now, and bringing, as Simon, with your background, you're aware of the quality requirements within healthcare are significantly different than in some other industries. Automotive and aviation tend to have very strict quality standards similar to healthcare, so there is some synergy there. But the area that we start with is just helping the manufacturer understand the deep need for quality management all the way through the product life cycle, from concept all the way to product sunset, once a product is taken off the market. And once a customer really understands what's required, then we help them build that entire process to manage the quality systems, bring the product to market, and be able to manage the product in the post-market situation. So it's a journey with several customers. I think the auto and the mobility manufacturers are, as I said, are better prepared to manage the quality standards and be able to kind of pivot parts of their manufacturing and design processes to enable this. But that being said, I do think that there's a future for them in a future state where there's a heightened sense of need by consumers to be in a state which is more environmentally friendly, as well as more centered around their personal wellness.
That's really interesting. And Saeed, and you mentioned the importance of emerging technologies and working with startups, and we do have a question here on that. Maybe you could talk about how is UL engaging with the startup community, and perhaps like which technologies or emerging technologies are you thinking of, potential game changers or real opportunity areas for further exploration?
Fortunately, we get a lot of opportunity to engage with startups, and one of those ways is through Plug and Play, which for us has been a real fantastic partnership, where we're really able to sort of get into at sort of a ground level with these innovators and really see how they're get their process, get their thinking of how they bring how they're thinking of solving these very important problems. From what we're really learning, in terms of technology, there's a couple of things, and especially, sort of when you look at COVID-19, one is sort of around acceleration and the use of digital tools to accelerate, different parts of the healthcare value chain. So, things like, digital clinical trials, remote, remote usability studies, remote inspections, things like that. Leveraging remote technologies to be able to manage the process of innovation, the process of gathering real world data, and being able to pivot into that space is so important. So it's not just about the product itself being digital, but it's about the process around the product, and really accelerating through the use of digitization of internal processes, around the regulatory pathway, as well as digitizing the data collection and being able to understand what that data is telling us. So that's sort of one area that we've looked at. The other area is really sort of pivoting existing products and existing capabilities into new spaces and new use cases that didn't exist before or didn't have the need before. As a very simple example, we've all heard of this this thermometer that has location tracking built in, and how that has helped look at how things like fever or body temperature has changed between a lockdown situation and an open situation. So we've really helped some clients being able to adapt existing technologies for sort of new use cases, things that again might not have existed before. So those are kind of the two areas that we've spent a lot of time on the last few months.
Yeah, it's super exciting. And look, as we land the plane, I might ask Saeed. Saeed, do you have any closing remark or a closing question to complete the fireside chat?
No, but it is great having you with us, and I have to take the opportunity to congratulate you. I know that I am an immigrant in this country, and I'm really excited in what the opportunities America has provided with me. And I always say it's very interesting that Google, Microsoft, and IBM are now run by Indian immigrant, I believe, as well as companies like Uber. And this, I believe, this diversity creates innovation as well, and working with different cultures and different countries. But I love to get your thoughts about that at UL, your global footprint. What does diversity bring to the challenge?
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And I totally agree with your comments around, how America really embraces its diversity. And I think, I've been fortunate to work for two corporations that really, say what they mean and mean what they say when it comes to diversity. And UL just, has embraced that in many different ways. It's not just about sort of the diversity of people. We really look at it from the diversity of of backgrounds, of experiences. It's how we represent our clients, how we represent the problems that we're trying to solve. And just like Plug and Play has such an impressive global presence, UL has spent a lot of time and effort to really broaden our global reach. And now over 60% of our employee base is outside of the United States. But that being said, we do operate like a global company. And again, I think that American corporations really have embraced the idea of globalization. I think the COVID-19 situation is going to be a very interesting one for us to manage through. Specifically around supply chain management. I think that there's going to be a push towards greater localization of critical components and critical pieces. But that being said, we will continue to serve a global market. And so it's going to be a very interesting time for us, in large corporations to be able to manage the differences between having, to localize supply chains while serving a global base of clients. But look, that's an opportunity for us all to support and get better at.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Saeed. Thanks, Upayan. It was a terrific conversation. Really a pleasure to have you with us.